It was early on the morning of Tuesday in what would become known as Holy Week, and as usual, Jesus was up and moving early, taking his disciples in tow. He was returning once again to ground zero in his conflict with the religious leaders of Israel, the temple. Hi, I'm Louis Marsh, pastor of River Church here in Parker, Arizona. Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Scrypt. This is part 3 of the week before the first Easter, and I've called this little story Poking the Bear. You'll see why. As they walked along, Jesus sees a fig tree by the road. It was on public land, and its leaves were fully in bloom. Perhaps because he had gotten up early, Jesus hadn't had time to eat, or perhaps he was alone praying while his disciples ate breakfast. But either way, or whatever the story was, by the time he reached this particular tree, well, he was hungry. Now, in Palestine, the fig trees produced their figs first and their leaves after that. Thus, if you saw a fig tree in full foliage, you would presume that it had fruit. The Gospels tell us that it was early for fruit, so that could have meant that the tree could be a bit green, the fruit, but, that would be okay. So like anybody else who's really hungry, that wouldn't present any real problem. So Jesus searched the tree and found that while it had the appearance of fruitfulness, there was in fact no fruit. It was barren. It was lifeless. The tree, much like the religious leaders of the city that it overlooked, Jerusalem, wasn't what it appeared to be. So Jesus cursed it. No, he didn't swear at it. The word cursed, rarely used in the New Testament, means to pronounce judgment upon someone or something. Jesus passes judgment on the tree, and it immediately begins to die from the roots upward. It wasn't noticeable then and there, but by the next day it would be. I had a friend in my high school youth group. We were somewhat embarrassingly called the Key Teens. Yeah, I know. Who got mad at Jesus and this story because she thought it was unfair that he was mad at this poor old tree. While he might not have been ecologically correct by cursing the tree, he wasn't being mean to it either. There was a symbolic meaning here. There was purpose to this act, and it was important, as will become clear next week. So the tree died, but it died for a good cause. Meanwhile, Jesus and his followers returned to the temple that he had just cleansed the day before. Seeing the stir his arrival caused, a pious posse descended upon him. The chief priests and some of the elders boldly pushed their way through the crowd to confront this threat to their continued well-being. They didn't hesitate because they had carefully planned out exactly what they would do, what they would say, how they would challenge and then humiliate this uneducated upstart Jesus. "Who do you think you are, Jesus?" they asked with false indignation. "What right do you have to teach at all, much less in this holy temple? Who gave you the right to do this?" The leaders thought this was an open and shut case. No one could do anything without proper authority, and since the Romans had given them the absolute authority in everything that had to do with religion, Jesus didn't have a leg to stand on. Jesus responded to them as he always did. He neither hesitated nor rushed. Instead, I imagine he smiled and in one simple move pulled the rug completely out from under them. "I will also ask you one question," he said, "and if you tell me the answer, then I will also tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, where did it come from? From heaven or from man?" If only we had a picture on the look on their faces when they heard that one. Unlike Jesus, they didn't answer right away. Instead, they pulled back, huddled up, tried to figure out what they should say. They couldn't say he had no authority because the people still loved John, and if they said his authority was from God, then people would ask them why they didn't believe and follow him. So like the political animals that they really were, they sheepishly said, "We don't know." Really? The spiritual leader of God's people, supposedly the most spiritually knowledgeable and mature men in the world, and all they could say to this simple question was, "We don't know." How humiliating was that? Then things got even worse for them as Jesus simply replied, "Well, then, I won't tell you where my authority to do these things comes from." The pious posse fell back in a humiliating retreat through the crowd. The battle was over, and Jesus held the field. While he kept teaching, his enemies called upon their allies and had yet another secret meeting. They'd been dealing with Jesus for years now, but in these last few months, since the resurrection of Lazarus in particular, that had so challenged their authority that their meetings were now much more serious. Just a few weeks prior to this, they had decided that Jesus had to go before the Romans stepped in and removed them from power and perhaps crushed the nation. Caiaphas, who was the high priest for that year, said this to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people than that the whole nation should perish." He said this as a prophecy, and his minions were bound and determined to carry it out. Jesus would die, and soon. They were all agreed on that. No matter what it took, they would make it happen and do so in the name of God. As Jesus returned to Bethany that evening, they met long into the night. If only they could find an insider, someone to betray Jesus. That would be the quickest and the easiest way to deal with this aggravating upstart. The meeting finally ended with all agreed, this Jesus must die. I hope you'll be with us next week as the plot thickens, people's true colors are further revealed, and through it all, Jesus continues unimpeded towards his destiny. I'm Louis Marsh, Senior Pastor of River Church right here in Parker, Arizona. I want to thank you so much for watching to this point in the video. Really appreciate it. Check out the QR code right over here somewhere, and you will find my other podcast, The Ultimate Sacrifice, where we share the true stories of men and women in the military that have served our country so bravely and so well. Once more, if you could give me a subscribe or a thumbs up, it would be great. I'd really appreciate it. Until next week, God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you later.